beautiful. You are listening to the Africana Woman podcast. I am your host, Chulu. Every week, I ask an Africana woman to invite us into her home to give us a snapshot into what happens behind her closed doors. I hope you will join me on this journey of discovery, revelation, and self-awareness. I'm not going to lie. It may become uncomfortable sometimes. However, I encourage you to push past your unease and challenge yourself to think differently. The simple act of expanding yourself to receive the unknown may be transformational for you. Ooh, we need to jump straight into this conversation. You know, my guest and I talked about so many things that are so passionate to me. And one of those things is education. You know, I work and I volunteer in the education space quite extensively, and I focus on the age group of around 15 to 19 years. And this is because those are the formative years of a young mind. So it is so important to help young people really have a strong sense of pride, of their identity, and just love their nation. But popular media would have us believe that we should be ashamed to be African, that there is nothing to be proud of when we say we're African, or that the only story Africa has to tell is of poverty and suffering. But we know that is not true. Yet somewhere along the way, we have forgotten to tell our children that. We have not done a good job of celebrating Africa with the younger generations. Now, you see, I can easily go on a rant about this, but I won't. Instead, please welcome to the Africana Woman mic, Sandra Chuma, the habits coach from the great nation of Zimbabwe. This was our conversation. Sandra Chuma is an entrepreneur, speaker, coach, podcast host, and award-winning documentary filmmaker. She believes that our greatest responsibility is to share our stories so we can inspire and create possibility for others. Sandra, welcome to the Africana Woman podcast. I am quite excited that you are here on this platform. I think when I first came across Ndini podcast, and consequently you, one of the things that really had me in awe was the excellence that you exude on your podcast, and also the regality and dignity that you give to African women's stories. So I just want you to know that you being here is actually quite an honor for me, and I'm so excited and so grateful that you are here to share your story. So welcome.
Thank you. And it is an honor for me to be here because, you know, we often look at other people who are maybe a little bit further ahead, but what I see in you is what you are doing with your platform and how you are a voice and a platform to inspire, to empower, to uplift African women. And I think the more of us who can do that, it can only lead to good things. And so I'm honored to have been invited to be on this podcast. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so we heard a snippet of your bio, but in your own words, can you tell us your story?
This question, honestly, because I've done so many interviews, this is a question that I literally have anxiety about. So I'm like, what do I say? Because I never know where to start. At its core, I'm a girl from Zimbabwe. I am proudly Zimbabwean, will always be proudly Zimbabwean. So I was born and raised in Zimbabwe. And one of the things that I'm incredibly proud of is where I come from. Because, you know, I think it's Maya Angelou who said, you know, I come as one, but I stand as 10,000. And I know that for me to be sitting here in this moment, having this conversation with you, there are so many people whose shoulders I stand on. And so that's why I tell you that I am proudly Zimbabwean, because of everything it has taken, all the generations it has taken for me to be here. And so I'm Zimbabwean, born and raised. And then I eventually moved to the UK and studied in the UK. I eventually moved to Canada and then on to the United States. And um, I feels like I've lived many lives because I've had many different careers over the course of time. And that's one of the things that, I believe that people need to get comfortable with. I think often we think that there's one purpose and one path that we must follow, but it's being open to, in different seasons of my life, different things were my purpose. I went from I worked in fast food. I remember
Yeah.
working, flipping fries and burgers at Burger King. So I
Yeah.
can tell you exactly how many grams of lettuce, mayonnaise, tomato go in a Whopper. And then moving on, I worked in banking. I eventually became a management consultant and business advisor. So working with Fortune 500 companies and working with global companies. And then moved on to eventually creating my own company with my husband. So again, in that same space of management consulting, advising. And what I found eventually was that all of the things that I had aspired to, there came a point in time where, I had a nice house, drove a nice
Yeah.
car, went on
Yeah.
vacations, bought nice shoes. And what I realized is the things that I thought defined success were not necessarily what success truly was. And that chapter in my life was really what led to me questioning what is my purpose and why am I here and what is the impact that I want to have. And, just as I said that, I stand on the shoulders of those who came before me, I thought about what do I want to pass forward to my daughter, my nieces, and their children? How will they remember that I was here? And that ultimately led to me realizing that part of what my purpose is to help to inspire other women to step into their possibility. And that then became the birth of the Ndini platform, which is really
Yeah.
focused on the stories of African women.
I read somewhere that from when you were a child, one of your fond memories is listening to your grandmother tell folk tales. I don't want to butcher how it's said in Shona. It's Ngano.
You've said it
But I
perfectly.
was just perfect. I was curious, which was your favorite folk tale?
Both of my grandmothers, and I'd love to just honor them and who they were, and my mother as well. Both of my grandmothers were women who suffered incredible hardship in their lives. When I was born and being raised, the country that I'm from, Zimbabwe, at that time was Rhodesia. So it was a segregated country. And so neither one of them ever had the opportunity to go to school. Neither one of them was educated. They grew up in incredible poverty. My mother's mother worked as a housemaid all of her years for a white family in the suburbs. And my father's mother, unfortunately, my father's father died before my father was born. So when my grandmother was pregnant with my father. So he grew up never knowing his father. And so he had a mother who had to raise him on her own. But these
Yeah.
women were incredible women of resilience, of courage. And they also dreamt dreams that were bigger than their life circumstances. They were the first people who ever said to me, Sandra, one day you're going to go abroad, and one day, you're going to, live in a big house, and all of the things that were their dreams.
Yeah.
So I think for me, that was the stories they told us, the usual stories that we all have in African culture, all the stories of the tortoise and the hare and all of those kinds of stories. But I think for me, the story that they spoke, and which ultimately I think played a big part in shaping who I've become and the dreams that I could dream, was them speaking the stories of possibility. That even though my grandmother only knew what this, big house in the suburbs on a tree-lined street was because she went to work there, that she dreamed that me, her grandchild, could live in that house. So I think those for me were the most impactful stories.
Yeah, that is really um, amazing that they literally spoke life into you and just made you think bigger, dream bigger. And I think that is a blessing in itself. Um, as somebody who is very well traveled, and at the beginning, you did state that you are proudly a Zimbabwean woman. Was there ever a moment that you felt your identity was threatened?
Gosh, so much. And I now sit and I speak from a position of, having life experience, and also I think really c- coming to a place of understanding my story. But it
Mm,
wasn't always that way. I know that when I very first went to the UK, for example, to live there, when in the Western world, and sometimes I don't fault the general public in the Western world, because the stories they hear, the only stories that most mainstream media shares, are the stories of struggle and strife and dictators and
mm,
all of those things. And so those were the stories that the people that I went to interact with when I was in the UK knew, right? So when they
yep.
looked at me, they looked at me from a place of pity, from a place of, looking down on me, that, oh, she's
Mm,
just from Africa. And so for many years, I I denied my Africanness. It wasn't
mhm.
something that I would share with people that I was from Africa. And because, you know, thanks to our colonial masters in Zimbabwe, I spoke English very well. And also based on the sacrifice that had been made by, my parents to send me to the best schools that they really couldn't even afford, that they'd really sacrificed to send me to good schools. So I spoke well. So I actually
Mm,
remember when I very first went to the UK, people would laugh at me, would make fun of my accent, not
mm.
because but because I sounded, as they said, proper. I spoke the
Yeah.
Queen's English, and they were like, "You speak so proper," and they would make fun of me. And so, because of that, people never quite could place. I think there was an assumption about what an
Mm,
African person sounded like. So they could never place where I was from. So for many years, I wouldn't tell people that I was Zimbabwean or that I was from Africa. And it only when I really started in the workforce and I realized that my story and where I'd come from was my power. That was my
mm,
superpower, because here I was working side by side, getting promoted, doing well in my career. And I'm stacked up against people who'd grown up with every privilege that I didn't have, who'd gone to
yeah.
schools that were, better than anything I could ever have dreamed of. And yet I could stand toe to toe, pound for pound with them. And that's when I realized, you know what? I had to come from way back to get here. And I'm dishonoring the sacrifice of everybody who put into me. In Africa, we talk about takes a village to raise a child.
Yeah.
All of those people who had contributed in, whether it be monetary means or whether it be just in terms of their words or encouragement, and I was denying their
Mm,
existence and denying that who I was and who I am was because of them. So that for me then became, whoa, me being African, me being
mm,
Zimbabwean is actually a superpower, because look where I came from and I can stand here with the best of you. So that really was the shift in me recognizing the power of my story.
oh, wow. Um, I know one, we have something in common. We went to convent schools. And and I know that, the many African parents' dreams are, I'm going to send my children to study abroad and I really want the best for them. And I just wanted you to talk a little bit about your experiences, especially when you just went to the UK, because at some points I think it's a bit fantasized, that experience living abroad and all of that. And I just wanted to hear what your experiences were coming, straight from Zimbabwe, first time traveling out at a young age. I'd imagine probably 18 or so, late teens. What was that experience like for you?
I love what you said, that the experience of going abroad is fantasized. I think that, like I said, my grandmothers growing up, neither one of them ever went on an airplane. So they had no idea. Neither one of them ever went abroad. So they had no idea. It was just this fantasy place. And I think that, especially if you think about culture and movies and the things that we're exposed to, it's always that, oh, over there, and the things they have over there are better. Right. And so we've created this culture. And I also think that the Western world, of course, benefits by selling us this culture that they're better. We've created this culture where our young people think that for you to be successful, for you to, the definition of success is to go abroad and to learn abroad. And I will tell you that, yes, because those economies are so much more advanced than we are. If you think about how long has the United States been the United States, how long is the UK? And also, if you think about, just to get political for a second, if you think about how some of those countries were built and where the resources came from, of course they have more. Of course they're more advanced. Their social structures are more advanced. Their buildings, their whatever are more advanced. But that's just because they started before we did. And yet, one of the things that I have come to appreciate so much is our culture. If you think about all of the conversation that happens around cultural, misappropriation, look at all the things that all of those countries we quote unquote admire borrow from our culture. So I really think that for me, and again, it's something that's come with age, that realization that where I came from is actually pretty cool, right? It's actually a pretty cool place. What challenges us, unfortunately, is, for example, my home country in Zimbabwe. Economically, it's not a great place to be. So from an opportunities perspective, like my cousin, who's growing up even in an urban area, is going to have less opportunities than a kid who's growing up in, Toronto or New York or wherever, just by virtue of resources. I remember growing up, and I'm sure you remember this at convent, how you weren't allowed to write in the textbooks because it had to be passed on to the next year and the next year. So you were getting a textbook that sometimes was 5 editions behind. So they've updated 5 times. But because of resources, we just don't have the access to resources. So I think that for me is, I don't know what the answer is in terms of how do we allow our young generation to realize that our countries actually are really cool and we have a lot going for us. And it just really is, how do we bring all of the education and the technology and infrastructure to our African countries? Because gosh, if we had a level playing field, just one of the things that I'm always so inspired by is, you look at how little resources we have in many of our African countries, and yet you look at what our people are able to produce. As they say, necessity is the mother of invention. You go home and someone's rigged up this and that, and they've taken this and then added it, and now they have something that works because they had to. So think of all that ingenuity if they had the resources. So yeah, I'm kind of going rambling here, but
but I love it. When you try, but as you said, it's something that you have come to appreciate with time. And even now, I mentor a number of students, and I have these conversations with them, and just trying to make them appreciate the things that are around them. It will take time, because this is something that has been ingrained in them for now it's 15 years. And in addition, their parents are also, they see what their parents are doing. They hear what their parents are talking about. I was
just advising some parents that, yes, our economy and maybe the politics may be bad, but then if you just focus and your conversations are always on those negative things, when will your children hear you praising the country? They need to hear that validation from you. That's where it starts from,
That's so
what's happening in home.
true. So true. And it's actually part of why I created Ndini, because for myself, like I said, I went, overseas, I went to the UK, and nowhere did I see women who looked like me, who were from Africa, who were being, spoken about in a positive light. The only time I ever saw African people was, aid organization ads with the emaciated woman with the emaciated baby, fly on mouth. Those were the only images I ever saw. And I was thinking about it that, wow, my nieces, my daughter, they're growing up in a world where that's the Africa they know. That's the only thing they know is, there's struggle and strife. And, and then even when you think about, like, how can they be enticed, or how can they even want to come to Africa if they're living abroad? Because like, oh no, like it's not a nice place. It's just war and famine. And so that's why I created Ndini, was because I know there are amazing women in Africa who are Africans in Africa and Africans in diaspora who are doing incredible things. And I wanted to share those stories to say, look, there are people, there is possibility, right?
Yeah. I think another, which I just wanted to touch on real quickly before we move on, is, when students go study abroad, I know that you were in school full time, and you were working 2 jobs for, and there's almost a sense of entitlement when young people, this young generation go abroad, where they think, oh, it should just all be handed to me, and I don't need to participate in building my future. I don't know if you have any thoughts around that.
Wow, you really did your research. Yeah, like when I was in university, I actually worked, at one point I worked 3 jobs to put because you can imagine, I went to the UK, I didn't have any access to funding, didn't have any grants or anything that I was eligible for. And my parents weren't in a position to be able to send me any money to help me through school. So I had to work. So, I worked at Burger King, I worked at Pizza Hut, I cleaned, I did all the things. And and this is one of the things that I think sometimes, we look down on. I couldn't possibly clean. I have cleaned toilets. I have done everything that you can do, because that's what I needed to do. And here's one thing that I will say is that it was literally some of the best lessons I learned in life, about work ethic, about showing up, about discipline, and even learning from, like, as I say, working at Burger King, like, oh, that's customer service. Oh, you go tell your customer that their meal is delayed. Oh, okay. You like all of these things that I learned that I could not have learned any other way. And I agree with you that our young generation has to realize that there is nothing that's going to be handed you on a silver platter. And that applies whether you're African or even like I said, I was working at Burger King, and I was working alongside kids who were British and whatever, who were also working. Fair enough, their circumstances might have been different in that, yeah, they might have had one grant or some scholarship and they were just topping up. But I think that it's this entitlement culture is so harmful to all of us, that you do have to work. There's nothing, even if the people we admire, I think of, like, I don't know, like Oprah Winfrey, nothing was handed to her. She had to work. If I look at from my own home country, Strive and Tsitsi Masiwa, nothing was handed to them. They had to work to become. We admire the end result, but we don't want to think about the work that went into getting to that end result.
So true. So, one of the things that I actually really like about you is when you talk about your husband, and, you talk so fondly about him. I wanted to find out from you, what role has culture, especially, your African culture, played in your marriage and being in foreign countries?
Oh, that's an interesting one, and it's an interesting one too from the perspective of, this is actually a conversation he and I were having the other day about, would we be different in our relationship had we
Mm,
lived in Africa, in our married years. I think ultimately culture still plays a huge part. Like for me, when I go home to Zimbabwe, I'm a
mm,
Zimbabwean woman, and I
yeah.
recognize that, there's the saying that when in Rome, you do as the Romans do. So who I am and how I behave, I have to respect my culture. I have to
Mm,
respect that whether I agree with everything or not, there is an element of culture which makes up who we are. And
mhm,
so I'm blessed that, even though I have huge respect for my culture and where I'm from, that my husband is not, his mindset is, he's not a patriarchal, like, you are less than me, and
mm,
and that has played a huge part too in who I've become and what has been accessible to me, in terms of, he has
mm,
pushed me in some ways to almost wanting me to be more educated, because he recognizes that as a woman I face very unique
mm,
challenges, and this is not just as an African woman, but
mhm,
not just as a Black woman, but as a
mhm,
woman period in the world. I face unique challenges, so he's very much of an open mindset, and I also think that for him, um, where he's from and how he was raised
mm,
really shaped the way that he thinks. Because, if I think about how they grew up, he's one of six
mm,
kids, and in their home he has two sisters and four brothers. They were
mm.
all, his mom and his dad treated them all equally.
Oh.
Everybody had to chip in, everybody
Mhm.
had to clean, everybody had to know how to cook. So all of my brothers-in-law, sometimes they'll come visit and they will cook for me, so they
Oh,
get,
that's so nice.
and I've never been, treated in terms of, culturally, oh, you're less than. And
Mm,
I think that's truly been for me a blessing. And I don't believe from my husband that, yes, of course, living in the Western world has somewhat influenced that, but it really was how he was raised
brought
in
up.
in their home. Yeah.
Girl, after the year we just had, I know as an entrepreneur and a leader, things got real lonely really fast. Uncertainty has become the order of the day, and yet we must continue to not only survive but thrive. So, as a leader, who do you turn to fill your cup? To give you inspiration, to teach you, and to mentor you? We have created a community just for this very reason, to support each other, to hold each other accountable, and to be each other's cheerleaders. This group is called the Africana Women Visionaries because we're looking past the storm and are focused on the vision we have for our companies and the African continent. Join the Africana Women Visionaries free Facebook group to learn more. Now back to the conversation.
So, what does education mean to you? And what has it done for you?
You know, I again, if I go back to the story of my grandmothers, my grandparents, even my parents, and the sacrifice, convent girl, convent fees were
Yeah.
not cheap. It was
Nope.
a huge deal to get into convent. So it was
Yeah.
always a sacrifice for them to put me through school. And,
Mm,
but for them, they recognized or realized the power of education, and that being
mm,
educated would stand me, it opens the doors.
mm,
Nowadays, I think though the world is shifting. I really think
mm.
that the world is shifting.
Okay.
Before, you had to have your CV, your resume, you had to say you had a degree, you had to have check all these boxes in terms of your education. But if
Mhm,
you look now at the entrepreneurs who are coming up in the world, many of them don't have a degree, right? Many of them have learned or built businesses on the job,
mhm.
on, all of those things. So I think that we're at a crossroads, not just
Yeah.
as African people, but I think as a world, where
Mhm,
we have to question, does it make sense for, you to go into debt to get a degree? What does it now mean for you to have a degree? And are there other ways that you can get an education, that it doesn't necessarily have to just be formal classroom learning? And I think as well, a huge thing that is starting to democratize learning is the internet. Because if you
Yes.
think about, you can go on the internet and learn how to do anything. I bet you
Anything.
there's a video that'll show you how to do brain surgery. You know what I mean? Like, you can learn
Yeah.
anything from YouTube. So I think that's shifting the definition of education. And I think also as employers, like for myself in our company with my husband, we're shifting our emphasis from, do you have a piece of paper from a university that says
Yeah.
you know how to do stuff, to more, oh, you have experience. Okay, tell me about that experience. So I think the world is shifting.
Interesting. Yeah. So I wanted to ask, I found it interesting that, you had decided to go back to university for journalism. And around this,
At the ripe old, say it, at
yes,
the ripe
when
old
you
age
were
of
40. But what was even more fascinating for me was that your daughter was also ready to start university. So you're going to be a freshman the same year. I don't think my son would let me live it down.
She was actually already in university. So, and here's the funny thing.
No.
I had classmates who, I have one particular classmate who I just adore her. She's also from Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
Her name is Tariro, and she's now high flying journalist at the New York Times. But she was younger than my daughter, and she's my classmate. So I refer to her as my forever baby, because
Right.
she didn't, like in class, we'd be sitting next to each other. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're younger than my daughter. But yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah. And, I was thinking, like, I don't think my son would let me live that down. But anyway, that aside, what is that one lesson that you hope that your daughter has learned from you over the years?
That you are infinite possibility, that I think our greatest limits, the greatest prisons we put ourselves, exist in our minds, that anything is possible, that it really is about believing. Like, if you're willing to believe, if you're willing to do the work, then anything is possible. And I think that's really what I would love for any young person to know, and any old person. Heck, I was 40 when I went back to school. That it's never too late, and that if you can dream it. I think, was it Einstein who said, or Pablo Picasso who said that, if everything you can imagine is real, so if you can imagine it, you can make it real, if you're willing to put in the work.
Yeah. So true. So I just wanted to emphasize again, Sandra is an award-winning documentary filmmaker, and we are definitely going to talk about one of her documentaries, which is called Plus, with exclamation at the end, and it is about the fashion industry, plus size models, or just plus size clothing, I guess, in the fashion industry. And I was just so curious why you chose that particular subject matter.
You asked me about what were some of the things that I realized going abroad. So when I was growing up in Zimbabwe, the concept of someone being plus size or whatever, that was actually like, it was the more the merrier, right?
Right.
It was like, that was like a mark of, first of all, it's a mark of wealth.
Right. Well,
like, whoa, you can afford to eat that good, that you can put on weight. And then also, like, just culturally where I grew up, the rounder the woman, the more curves, the better. And so I never, growing up, had the concept of, oh, I was overweight, or it wasn't something that even entered my mind. And it wasn't until I went to the Western world, until I moved to the UK, and then I moved on to Canada and the United States, that I recognized and started to realize that, oh, being bigger or being curvaceous was not an attractive thing, that what they valued and based on what media portrayed was like straight, skinny, that's what was in. And it also stemmed from me shopping. And so being a woman of Zimbabwean descent, I tend to have bigger hips and thighs and smaller waist. And it was hard to find clothes that fit. And that for me was the first struggle, was trying to find clothes. And so I went through a period of time where I was like, I need to lose weight, and trying to do all the diets and lose weight because somehow magically then I would now be attractive, which was weird because I already had a husband who, trust me, likes meat on his bones.
Right.
But it was also then in just kind of seeing all the struggles and all the eating disorders and all the angst around weight and how, size was treated in media. And so when I went to journalism school, one of the, I started to think about, gosh, like this would be a really interesting documentary to do about the fact that in the United States or in North America, in modeling terms, when you are a size 6, 8, you're considered plus size. A size 6, like I would go to these photo shoots to film, and the girl who was there, who was like, oh, she's plus size, is a girl who, like, in my world is skinny. And so that for me was, and the fact as well that, 64% of North American women are a size 16 or bigger. And yet the fashion industry tells us that what's beautiful is not those people. So there are these 64% of women who are constantly being told, you're not beautiful. And when you fit into this size 0, I'm like, what is a 0 anyway? Like air,
Right.
then you'll be attractive. And so it just really, for me, was an interesting thing. And I happened upon a community of women through a platform called Full Figured Fashion Week, who were trying to buck the trend, who were trying to share a different narrative. And that then ultimately became the backdrop for this documentary that I made, where it was really talking about how crazy this notion was that, plus size, what is plus size? And then how the fashion industry defines plus size.
Yeah. So if somebody wanted to watch the documentary, where can they access it?
This is an interesting one in that I sold the rights to a production company where they've not yet really put it out to release. And so, because I sold the rights, you can see the trailer.
I've seen the trailer. Okay. We will be waiting and we'll be very excited.
Someday I'll let you know.
Okay.
But another documentary actually that I made, and this one I was, again, something that I loved, and it was something that I really felt compelled to explore, is a documentary that I made with a fellow Zimbabwean who was my classmate, Nyasha Kadandara, who I just absolutely adore. And she still is one of my besties. And she's an amazing journalist. She's currently based in Kenya, has produced all kinds of reporting, documentaries and things. And her and I are hopefully one day going to make we have an idea for a documentary that one day we're going to make. But we did a documentary together, which was called Queens and Knights. And it was about a rugby club in New York, which calls themselves inclusive. And part of why they call themselves inclusive is because they welcome everybody, regardless of age, race, sexual orientation, whatever. And so it was this really interesting microcosm of, people from different races. So Black people, white people, Latinas, all coming together for this team. And then also people of different sexual orientations. So, gay people, straight people, and just telling their stories, and how at the end of the day, we all have the same hopes, dreams, aspirations, regardless of what we look like or how we identify.
Yeah. And is that available to be viewed anywhere?
Yeah, I think that one you can look it up on YouTube. It's called Queens and Knights. And if you look up Queens and Knights and my name, it should come up. It was actually
Okay.
um uh
Oh,
it was actually the bigger rights were bought by NBC Sports. And but a short version of it is available on YouTube.
okay, great, great. You know, last year, 2020, one of the words that just kept going around in everybody's mind is pivot, pivot, pivot. I think a lot of people are tired of pivot, but I really wanted to just dig a little bit deeper around, again, as we spoke earlier, when you said that, you know, you made a pivot in your career and went into something completely different. It was uncharted waters for you. uh, you
Still
know, could
is.
you tell us tell us a little bit about, you know, why you were you felt so strongly that you needed to change, and you know, what was that experience like?
It ultimately for me came down to one word, and that's purpose.
Mm,
Why am I
mm,
here? And it really stemmed from me asking myself the questions. Because as I said to you, you know, my husband and I created a company, and it very quickly became successful, much more successful than
mm,
we'd ever imagined when we were creating it. And so I very quickly then, you know, went from, you know, just being an employee and doing very well at various companies and being an advisor to now owning a business, having employees of my own, and running a business that became very successful. And it
mm,
was in that because, you know, you kind of, as I said, growing up, the aspiration was, you know, buy a nice house, live in a, you know, live in a nice house in neighborhood, you know, have a nice car and all of the, and be able to go on holidays, a proper holiday, not
mhm.
like for me growing up, a holiday was you went to your cousin's house in the rural areas, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like a proper holiday. And so when I checked off all those boxes, then the question, I couldn't figure out why I felt empty. I felt
Mm,
unhappy because on paper, I was successful. I had the
mm,
things that society said is success. And so that really then became a journey of self exploration and digging into what is my purpose? Why am I here? And one of my guiding principles actually came from something my father used to say to me growing up all the time. My father used to say to me, you know, Sandra, to she who much is given, much is required. And he said that to me often. And it was something that was also modeled for me by my parents that, you
mm,
know, with what they had, they were always sharing, you know, trying to uplift others. And so it was something that I really grew up with. And that became the driver for me in terms of what do I want my life to mean? What's the
mm,
legacy that I want to leave behind? And I, you know, it's not like the answer came to me, you know, overnight or the heavens opened and the angels sang. It was really a journey of what means something to me, and it kept going back to who I am at my core and the fact that I am a girl from Zimbabwe, I'm a girl from Africa, and what do I do that'll make a difference to somebody who I don't even know's life. And then when I went to university, actually, when I went to journalism school, I thought I wanted to be a journalist. I thought that I wanted to, you know, go and report on, you know, be like Christian Namanpo, Tumi Mahabo, or, you know, these people I admired, and
mhm,
Justina Mkoko that I grew up seeing on TV. And when I went to journalism school, I realized that my purpose was not
mm,
to
mm,
report on what had already happened, which is what a lot of journalism is. But my purpose was to use what I'd learned to create new narrative, to create
mm,
new stories that we could share about
mm,
who we are. Because I think ultimately it comes down to, you know, we're talking about what our young people believe about going abroad, and that life is somehow better when you go over there, is really what's the story that we
mm.
can tell about ourselves. You know, there's that, I think, an African saying where as long as the hunter holds the pen, you know, the lion, they'll always glorify themselves. And so
Yeah.
if we flip the script, and as Africans, we start to take back our own story, to tell our own stories. And so that became my compelling why, is how can I be a part of telling the stories of Africans in a new way with a different narrative? It's not to dispel or to say poverty doesn't exist. It does. Not to say that we have problems in leadership and dictatorships and war. That exists, but we're not one thing. We're complex, multifaceted, and there is the good and there is also the bad, and we need to be giving equal airtime to all of those stories that make us African. So that ultimately became my why.
Ah, so beautiful, so beautiful. And this is a lovely place to where we'll start winding down. In the Africana woman community, we have a little saying that goes, know your roots, grow your purpose. So I have a few questions for you, some quick fire questions. Well, I don't know if it'll be quick fire, but anyway, I do have a few questions for you. Just to wrap up.
Is that your cue to me to say, like, answer shortly, ma'am, please?
No. I love I love it when you elaborate and give, that extra meat to the story. I love it. So here are the questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, great. Did you ever have did you ever have a weakness that has now become your superpower?
I'd say it was my story. Like that, for me, not owning who I was, where I was from, that was my weakness, and that I tried to deny or hide who I was and where I was from. And it was only through growing up and maturity that I realized actually where I'm from and who I am and who my ancestors were is my superpower.
Yeah. And another fun fact about Sandra is that her school reports always said that Sandra talks a lot. So look at her now, teachers.
Literally was on air. When you had to bring your school report home, like that was not a good day for me, because it always it was, at least I was consistent. That's what I now, as a grown up, that's what I say to my mom, like,
Right?
I was consistent. Like every report card said, Sandra talks too much.
Too much. Okay, here's your second question. What are you rooted to?
Oh, I'm rooted to possibility. I think
Oh,
that has
that's good.
become my touchstone, my anchor, that anything is possible, that anything is possible, and being open to the possible.
That's good. What are your favorite ways to nourish your mind, body, and spirit?
Oh, my mind is reading. I read a lot, and I actually get up super early because my days are so busy. I realized that, trying to get reading in, the only time that I could do it was very first thing in the morning when everything's quiet before the day starts. And so I get up extra early just so I can read. That's my pleasure. I also listen to a lot of podcasts. I love podcasts because I think it's such an easy way to consume learning on the go, while you're working, while you're doing other things. So for me, it's reading books and listening to books. I also listen to a lot of books and podcasts. And what I love too, if you think about it, for me, and this is one thing that I think people do, if you think about how long it takes an author to write a book, the amount of time, the amount of research, the amount of whatever, and then for whatever, $20, you literally have this person's whole life learning there for you to just take and take from it what you want. So yeah, for me, it's reading, listening to books, and podcasts.
Lovely. Okay, and this is the last one.
You asked about so that's my mind. My body, I probably eat way too many things that I probably shouldn't be feeding my body, but I'm really becoming more conscious of what I eat and why I eat. I think the why has become more important for me, because I think it was so easy for me before, just mindlessly be stuffing things. And I think the greatest, I had a coach who taught me something, that she said, when you're eating, use this acronym HALT. She said, ask yourself these 4 questions. She said, am I hungry? Am I angry or anxious? Am I, what's the L? Oh, it's going out of my mind. The T is, oh gosh, and now I completely messed it up. Sorry, Lisa, who taught me this. Am I hungry? Am I angry? Am I tired? Or am I lethargic or something like that? I forget what the L is. I can't remember. Gosh, I'm just blanking on what it means. But it was a great thing for me to be aware of the reasons that I'm eating. And then in terms of mind, body, and then my spirit is, people like to call it fancy things, meditation, prayer, whatever it is. For me, it's really about getting still and listening. I just having that time of just being still and listening to whatever is coming through to me from whatever words you want to use, God, the universe, whatever. I think that for me is really important.
Awesome. And your final question, what do you know for sure?
Possibility. Word of the day, right?
Yeah.
Possibility. I know that anything is possible. Anything is possible. There's so many things in my life that have happened that when you logically think about it, make no sense. But it truly is being open to possibility. That's what I know for sure.
Sandra, this has been an amazing hour. Well spent. Lots of wisdom dropped, guys. Thank you. Thank you so much. Please let the audience know how they can find out more about what you are doing. And congratulations on your new certification as I won't get it wrong, a habits coach. Congratulations on that.
I'm true African style. I was talking about education earlier, and I literally feel like I'm just collecting all these certificates. So I'm a life coach, I'm a business coach, I'm a habits coach, I'm a productivity coach. I have all these certifications, but it all comes together because one of the things that I love to do as well, with all my platforms, is to share information, because I recognize again that I'm in a privileged place, that the life I lead, the people I have access to, the information I have access to, not everyone does. And so when I learn, I pass it on because I want us all to learn. In terms of where you can find me and what I'm up to, Instagram and Facebook are probably the best places. So on Instagram, I'm Sandra.Chuma, and you can find me on Facebook as well. Sandra, I'm on Facebook, Lord knows what that thing is. But if you go to my website is sandrachuma.com, then you can find all of the things that I'm up to on my website. And also, how could I not mention this? The platform that I'm so proud of, that I love, is called Ndini, which is spelled Ndini. And Ndini in my mother tongue, Shona, means I am. And it's back to possibility, because I believe that our words have the power to shape our lives and to shape what is possible. And so when you say I am, those are literally the 2 most powerful words in the English dictionary, because whatever you say after becomes, it shapes your destiny. So Ndini is I am, and you can find Ndini on all the social media channels everywhere as Ndini Media is where we're on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. Our website is ndini.com.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you for being on the Africana Women podcast. This has been an absolute pleasure. Okay.
I'm so grateful to you. Thank you for having me. Thank you so much. And to you, I say thank you. I am so proud of you, because I know that it is no small feat to create a platform, and all the work that goes into feeding a platform and putting content out and doing all the things. And so I truly respect you for what you are doing, and I am grateful. And I know that there are many people who will benefit from the work that you are doing.
Thank you.
After listening to that conversation, I hope that you have a deeper gratitude and appreciation for the Africa that we call home. A few things that stood out for me that I would love for you to just think a little bit further about are, the first is, the idea that there's nothing to celebrate about Africa. If we don't tell those good stories about our countries, about our continent, then guess what? The narrative about the place we call home will continue to remain negative. It actually reminds me of a campaign I once saw, which was done a few years ago, and it is called "This is My Kenya." I highly recommend you check it out. It's on YouTube. I shall also add the link in the show notes. And basically, the video illustrates that it is only the people, it is the people that live in the places of interest who have the power to change the perception. So speaking negatively is really just, it's a habit, and a habit can be changed. So can we get into the habit of saying something good, saying something positive about our countries, about our continent? And I'll remind you, and this is for parents, specifically, please speak positively in front of your children. You are the first person your children learn their pride for their country. They learn it from you. So the second thing I want you to consider is the idea of having to go into debt for an education. Whether it's private schools, whether it is universities abroad, like African parents will go to no end to make sure their children are highly educated. And as Sandra so eloquently put it, education has become democratized in the age of internet, and it's given us access to alternative routes of education. So where employers are putting more value in experience over a piece of paper, can you really afford to have your children sitting at home in front of a TV for a whole holiday instead of them getting some form of job or work experience, internship, whatever it may be? We have to rethink these things a little. I'd love for you to talk to your peers. Talk to them and, ask people that own businesses and ask them, what are they actually looking for when they are employing people? So let's just do a bit more research into the routes that we should be pursuing to educate our children. My peoples, I need you to reach out to Sandra on social media at Indini Media or sandra.chuma. Tell her you heard her on the Africana Woman podcast, and please show her some love. Thank you so much for making us part of your day by listening in. I truly appreciate you. And please help me get the word out about the Africana Woman podcast. All you have to do is take a screenshot of this episode and post it on your social media stories. And don't forget to tag me at Chulu by Design. I love to see your feedback. Now, you guys know I play in Instagram. If you want to chat with me personally, drop me a line. So until next week, I want you to remember, know your roots, grow your purpose. This has been a production of Ulendo Creative Media. You can find out more about their services on www.ulendocreative.com.